Okay. So now I'm doing more stuff, but let me tell you this. The Atlantic finally admitted that left-wing terrorism is on the rise. Let me say this real quick. Something profound has shifted in the political culture and media because the Atlantic just admitted what many of us have known for a long time. Left-wing violence is on the rise. It's a shocking admission from a media that, according to CNN's Daniel O'Sullivan, can't find any examples of left-wing violence. Yeah, we found that the far left terrorism has increased since President Donald Trump's rise to political dominance in 2016. Indeed, 2025 marks the first time more than 30 years left wing attacks outnumber those from far right, despite in recent increase. However, left wing terrorism is not nearly as common today as it was in the 1960s and early 70s. These years marked the heights of groups such as Weather Underground and Symbionese Liberty Army, best known for kidnapping the news paper Harris Patty Hearst. In the 80s and early 90s, left wing terrorism declined while jihadist and right wing terrorism rose, particularly from the forms of anti government and white supremacist violence. Following that trend, according to analysis, violence on the left accounted for plots and attacks from 1994 to 2000 compared to 144 on the right. The difference narrowed in the following decade, but the right continued to account for significantly more attacks and killings than the left did. By the year 2016 was the turning point for left-wing terrorism event as right-wing incidents remain much more common. Trump's political ascent and expansion of MAGA movement seems to have re-energized the left-wing violent extremism, which accounted for 37 incidents from 2016 to 2024. Most of them have been motivated by either anti-government or partisan statement. By July 4 of this year, the far-left extremist has already been responsible for 5 terrorist attacks and plots, putting 2025 on a pace to be the left's most violent year in 3 decades. Of course, this article isn't perfect. It implies that Trump is somehow to blame for the rise of left-wing terrorism. Of fucking course, of fucking course, of fucking course. For some reason, it's his fault. According to a report by the Center of Strategic and International Studies, used by 71% of the Atlantic plots from 1994 to 2000 were against government targets, were inspired by the general opposition to federal authority in a wave of attacks spearheaded by the broader American militia movement, which emerged as a reaction to perceived government overreach fueled by concerns about gun control, federal regulations, and growing mistrust of the federal government. The movement was galvanized by 1992 Ruby Rouge's standoff in Idaho, where confrontation between federal agents and the family of Randy Waver resulted in 3 deaths, and 1993 Waco siege in Texas, where the standoff between branch D- D- Davidians and federal agents ended a deadly fire, killing over 80 people. These incidents reinforced belief among American militia groups that federal government was oppressive force infringing on people's freedoms. Anyways, now that we go here, we're going to this. This happened
I
at
can
an
conf-
ICE facility where someone with what I believe was a rifle. Let me see. But he shot up a place. I believe one person died and 3 were injured. At least that's what I heard.
confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence.
Yep.
It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence, to include here in North Texas, where back on July 4th, we saw a coordinated attack carried out against an immigration detention center in Alvarado, Texas.
There was also a bomb threat
What I
at
can also share
this
with
facility
you is
in
that
August.
early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature.
Jesus.
Again, this is just the most recent
Yep.
example
Ban
of this
Dremels.
type of attack. I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted
Steven
violence.
Crowder.
It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence, to include here in North Texas, where back on July 4th, we saw a coordinated attack carried out against an immigration detention center in Alvarado, Texas.
There was also a bomb
What
threat
I
at
can also share
this
with you
facility
is that
in August.
early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature.
Jesus.
Again, this is just the most recent
course.
example
Ban
of this
Dremels.
type of attack.
Yep. Another terrorist attack. And who hates ICE? It's obviously left. And all this shit has been happening so recently. Man. Let's see. Here's another one. Judge Janey has announced that they captured a woman traveling from New York to D.C. on a mission to assassinate President Donald Trump. She's now in custody and will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. 100% agree. Now this too. Another assassination attempt. Holy crap. Yeah. Trump is right going after these people. There is a huge left-wing problem. A huge left-wing problem. It's not even close. What the hell? Not only that, but there was the Sky Meadow Club as well, and that was also shot up. Let me show you Gavin Newsom.
Look, we had a 15-year-old disabled kid in Los Angeles was waiting for his sister to come out of high school, and they pulled out guns on this kid.
I don't
They
believe
pulled out
that.
guns and handcuffed this young child.
I don't believe
That's
you.
happening in the United States of America. Masked men jump.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I'm gonna tell you this: Gavin Newsom is a piece of shit bullshitter, funded by George Soros. I don't believe a single thing this man says. What happened to your 10-year plan to end homelessness that lasted 22 years and you still got homelessness to rise up instead? What happened to the fact that anyone who steals under $400 worth of stuff doesn't get prosecuted for it? What happened to that, Gavin Newsom?
Jumping out of unmarked cars.
What also happened to, like, you pretty much letting criminals out every single day as well as harboring illegal immigrants in your city?
People disappearing, no due process, no oversight, zero accountability happening in the United States of America today. People ask, well, is authoritarianism, you're being hyperbolic? Bull, we're being hyperbolic. If you're a black and brown community, it's here in this country.
Oh
and so I'm deeply proud that I had the privilege of signing the nation's first bill to address the issue of masking, also to require.
Yep, man, I'm just going to tell you this. Gavin Newsom has no authority over the federal government, so that bill won't do shit. It's just something to look nice on his record for being a super duper progressive ass man. And, like, it's not progressive in the good way. It's progressive in the extremist, pretty much radical way. But yeah. Oh my God.
You have simple identification, to your point. I mean, if some guy jumped out of an unmarked car in a van with a mask on, tried to grab me, I mean, by definition, you're going to push back. And so these are not just authoritarian tendencies. These are authoritarian actions by an authoritarian government.
Oh my God, it's the same bullshit too. Obama did it as well. Bill Clinton did it as well. George Bush did it as well. George H.W. Bush did it as well. Richard Nixon did it as well. Enforcing the border is like one of the most basic parts of being president. Just because Joe Biden didn't do it doesn't mean that it didn't happen for the past, like, 200 years that we were enforcing borders. Like, Gavin Newsom, he's a grifter, he's a bullshitter, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care. But yeah, another shooting, of course. And this one was anti-ICE. Now let's see.
Response to his power. Well, I think the only thing the far left really responds to is power, Jim, if I'm being honest. I wish that wasn't the case, but it actually is. And so, excuse me, the thing that they're actually going to be responsive to is the recognition that there are consequences on the other side. And this is why it's so important and why the president is so insistent that we actually take legal action against those who broke the law in the Biden administration.
Exactly.
If they get off scot-free, if they're never investigated, if they're never prosecuted when they violated the law, then they're just going to come back and do the exact same thing again. And there are a few different ways, of course. So it's the big tech companies that were censoring conservatives. They've got to know that's not going to be allowed, and there are going to be consequences for it. The banks, the president is really preoccupied with this, and rightfully so. So many conservatives, so many conservative nonprofits were.
Oh yeah, for the banks. Yeah, if you remember what happened with Visa, MasterCard for games, that also happened. But as well as, like, some like PayPal, for example, I remember if they lock you out of your account, they are actually allowed to keep your money, apparently, for some reason. And that's bullshit, because if you're being locked out of your account and locked out of your money, you at least should have the option to be able to take it out. But no, they don't do that. That's disgusting behavior by them.
Debanked. They actually had their money stolen from them by these big Wall Street institutions.
Yep.
You've got to make sure that doesn't.
Imagine multi-millionaires taking more money from you. Yeah, great. That's exactly what we need. More multi-millionaires taking money from like people who probably had a few $1,000s in them.
Happen, and of course you've got to pay the lawfare back in kind.
Yep.
You've got to say to the Comeys and the Brennans of the world, of course you got to follow the law. You can only prosecute people when they actually broke the law, but we know that a lot of people broke the law in the last administration, and they've got to face.
Only last administration, pretty much every administration. Congressmen break the law left and right because there's no repercussions for it. Because, like, I get it. You have a law, but if the law isn't enforced, it's basically useless.
Face real justice, not just words, not just getting hauled before a committee in Capitol Hill. If people broke the law, they have to actually be prosecuted for it. Because I think that if they do that, if they know that the consequence for breaking the law is go to jail, then the next generation of Democrats, they're not going to try the same thing. They're not going to try to throw Donald Trump in prison.
Yep. Yeah, man. Another freaking case, like always. Let's see. Now we got to Hillary Clinton. What is this lady gonna say? Oh, it's gonna be, I bet it's gonna be some absolute bullshit. Bullshit. I know for a fact. Hillary, what about your emails? Hillary, what about sending nuclear secrets to China? What about you being tied to pretty much almost every single government scandal that's been here in the past 30 years?
Include myself. We have got to stop demonizing each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I think most of that right now in our country's history is coming, from the right, coming from.
Oh my God. Hillary Clinton, once again, bullshitting. Weren't you the one who took a part in this? Weren't you and Obama the ones who started this? Huh? That was you and Obama, Hillary. You both fucking know it. You both know it for a fact. You're the ones who started all this bullshit. You're the reason people consider the right this like this. You're the reason people are so tied up into this bullshit. And what happened during, I think, the Biden administration? White supremacists were named as a terrorist organization. Rightfully so. But the problem was Antifa never was. Antifa was the left-wing terrorist. Then there's also people who are like Free Palestine who are also terrorists. All this bullshit. And it's because then you let that shit fester on your side so much to the point where that's the only place it's coming from.
People who want to dominate, they want their point of view, writing out slavery from history, that doesn't make it go away. We have got to stop with the finger pointing and the scapegoating. We can have legitimate disagreements, right? I mean, how do you provide quality, affordable health care to everybody? Let's figure that out.
I know exactly how. You force everybody to get health care under Obama's administration, and then you give them a shitty-ass health care that, to be honest, barely helped the civilians, and just was a huge tax burden on the American people in general. That's how you do it. Fine.
With what's going to be job loss from AI. Let's get working on that. That's what we should be doing, but we should do it in the truth-based reality that we have to.
Hillary Clinton, you're literally one of the most corrupt figures of all freaking time. Hell no. There is no truth with you.
Live in. Facts and evidence have to matter again. And then we can start having good debates. When I was in the Senate that raises a larger question.